My name is PJ Stoneburner. I'm from Los Coyotes Reservation of Cueño Indians. Been monitoring here at this village site for about a year. Actually, the project started about a year ago, January 2011. During the first initial week of work out here, the scope of work at that time was clearing and grubbing. They were actually removing vegetation, preparing for the earthwork to happen, and over the course of the weekend, the residents here, nobody knows for sure who, removed an orange tree from literally right there. When the monitors came back the next day, they discovered bones around the spoils piles in the vacant hole, which enacted Public Health Code 7050, which is the treatment of human remains. Basically, the long story short, the process is medical examiner was called. The bones were identified as human and most likely Native American. That information then in turn went to the Native American Heritage Commission, which is delegated to determine who exactly is the most likely descendant. The most likely descendant was determined, and it was determined to be San Luis Rey, who was actively monitoring the site and actually did make the discovery. From that point forward, work ceased here for approximately a year. Up until then, work was allowed to continue to the north, and this road being about a mile and 2/10 long, the project had been truncated about 1,500 feet to the north, allowing them to work that far up until here. And then approximately about 3 weeks ago, Army Corps of Engineers, who had put the initial stop work order here, had lifted their ban on the stop work, which then in turn allowed Palomar College to come in and continue work, which consisted of initially taking off the grass with the requested equipment by the tribe, not being destructive as a dozer or anything like that. It was a rubber tired loader. But during the course of that, more artifacts were discovered, more human remains were discovered. Subsequently, more litigation, unfortunately, was pursued just because of the resistance from the developer. During the process, it was determined that avoidance in this area wasn't an option. The road had to go through, which then in turn forced the archaeos to come up with a data recovery plan, which allowed them to then dig up the site to explore the subsurface deposits until a point where they achieved redundancy in what they were seeing, which then allowed them to clear the site since there was no more useful information for them, which is not okay with the Native Americans. The Native Americans and archaeologists, we have two separate points of view. The archaeologists are governed by scientific discipline, and Native Americans are spiritually connected to these sites. So, unfortunately, we do represent two vested interests, two completely separate vested interests, and we always don't see eye to eye, unfortunately. They felt that the site was deemed clear, and on the morning of Thursday, February 20, was it the 22nd?
I think so. Yeah. So basically this past Thursday.
Yeah, 2012, they had gotten here extra early. Up until yesterday, the start time had been 7 a.m. They got here at 6, had the equipment running by 7. They got here at 6, had the equipment running by 6:30, and by the time we arrived, just before 7, the site was completely covered with fill material. The most disturbing aspect of it was the fact that they did premeditate it. They did not coordinate with the proper monitors. And besides that, to do a proper fill, a proper respectful fill on top of a site, there has to be an actual physical barrier in the form of geomat, which you can see they did it. They literally put fill material directly on top of the site without providing a dignified barrier and separation. So now any future work, which they will have to do subsurface infrastructure, electrical, water supply, drainage, sewage, when these infrastructures are installed, there will be no physical barrier for them to actually see when they're digging to the dirt when they do hit the site. So it's very, very sad day. Yesterday was very sad. It was emotionally disturbed for everybody who has a vested interest in this site. Spiritually, of course. It brought many people to tears, and it was just a sad, sad day. All along, the college maintains it that they're legally obligated to do what they did, but the manner they did was it wasn't respectful, and it was to a point, to a degree, retribution paid on to the Native Americans here for being present, for voicing their concerns, and being here throughout the process. A certain level of transgression had built up between the college and Native Americans, and the actions they took here, to my opinion, satisfied their transgressions. They really got a good kick out of doing this to us, which is really depressing. So that's where we're at today.
One thing that I just wanted to talk about, and what I noticed also too, is that over there's a house, and a lot of farm workers live there in the house, and there's a lot of orchards, and a lot of the farm workers pick the fruit that's around this sacred site, that's actually on this sacred site, and everything. And I was wondering if you could talk more about the politics of where does that fruit go, who is that fruit sold to, if you know any of that information as well.
I do. In walking through the orange groves, you know, the amount that we did walk through the orange groves, I did notice a sign that said grown for sun-kissed.
Oh.
Yeah. So sun-kissed, for anybody who doesn't know, California was actually, back in the early 1800s, was actually one of the first orange producers. I mean, Riverside County is known for oranges, and right next to Riverside County is Orange County. You know, it kind of puts two and two together. So California is renowned for oranges. Not only oranges, this particular location where the site is at is referred to as the avocado belt. There's only a small portion of area in California, and only in California, where avocados grow, and that's what is up on the hill. So we do have a mixture of oranges and avocados, which from a cultural standpoint is very destructive. The two most destructive forces to sites in Southern California are orange groves, or any kind of produce groves, and golf courses. Those two items seek out unique topography and a high quantity of water, which is the two key ingredients for cultural sites. And this site being very unique in itself, just because of its geographical location. It's inland off of the coast, probably about 30 miles. But this north-south corridor, known as the 15, which was built in the 70s, actually in this area unearthed several inhumations and cremations. So this whole valley is known for inhabitation, being inhabited for many, many years. And more so than that, what we're seeing here is evidence that this site was not only important to the Luiseno people, whose traditional territory this is, but we're finding remnants and leftover artifacts from locations reaching out as far as from here to Bishop, which is, I mean, that's almost half of California. We're finding obsidian from Coso and Casa Diablo, which it suggests a very strong trade route. We're finding stones from here. We're finding stones here that are only from Palm Springs area, Camp Pendleton, some maybe as far as Mexico. And the reason for that is just that, like I had mentioned, the geographical location. The 15 being the ideal place for a north-south corridor. That's why they built the 15 there. That route would have been traveled by many Native Americans. And right here we have the 76, which is an east-west corridor that runs literally from the desert all the way to the ocean, which would have gave inland tribes access to the ocean. I mean, there are strictly inland and desert tribes who fully have a concept of what the ocean is and what the ocean can provide for our people. These trips would have taken many days, and this is one of the spots where they would have crossed along the way, leaving tools and items they had brought with them as a form of payment for passage and as a form of respect for passage. So, and that's what we're seeing here today. We've seen, like I had mentioned, items from far distances. From our way of life that we're accustomed to today, it almost seems inconceivable to hike that far. It's really powerful when you think about the humanity that would have been paid on to each other back then. It would only be nice if we could see that again these days, the respect. But when something like this happens, you can tell all respect is out the door.
Thank you so much, PJ, for doing the interview with the Indigenous Peoples Media Project of Poor Magazine. Do you have anything, last thoughts to say? Anything about the sacred site?
No, I've been working as a Native American monitor for going on 10 years now, and our ultimate goal is preservation and protection. We like to identify sacred sites and protect them when they're in the path of development. And quite often we could be portrayed as anti-development, anti-capitalism. And to some degree that may be true, but we are all for this project. We're not all for the road location. This project this road will feed the North Palomar College. I mean, colleges are good. Colleges educate people. Colleges bring life into this country. But they don't have to do it over a sacred site. They just don't. This is our ultimate goal: preservation and protection. And if more people were like-minded and respectful enough, our job would be a lot easier. But it's not. It's not.
Totally. Well, thank you so much. And just like you said about college is right here.
Yes.
I've learned a lot here just being here for one day. So thank you all so much. Hope.